like human life. I don't think we can really picture what it would look like. I think you can make general assumptions like they're going to need to move somehow. But even that is like up to a lot of different variables. Like, do they live in water? Do they live in the sky? Do they live on ground? Because you would move in totally different ways in any
I
of
was
those
saying would be
situations.
creepy if somehow we found another planet and the life on there, like there was the alien life was exactly looking like humans.
I
Like
don't
that
think
would
it would.
be. No, I'm just
I
saying
don't
that'd be
think
like a
so.
crazy what if scenario. It'd be like find a new planet. It was just these humans, but they're like either they're more
Yeah.
advanced or like way less advanced. Like they're just cavemanning it up. It'd be like what the heck?
I
It'd be
mean,
like a Twilight Zone episode.
I think you could probably, assuming there's life throughout the universe, I think you could probably find species that look like the general shape of a human, like they walk on two legs and they have two arms. That's probably a common thing, but I think there's a bunch of other different types of like anatomies for aliens that are just you can't even comprehend it until you see it, you know.
It's probably gonna be like a couple thousand years before anything like it happens. But
I don't
seeing
know.
like
It's just one day it might happen. You really can't predict it for finding alien life, yeah.
the only reason I say it like that is just because I guess this is hard to say because I think to me it seems so outlandish. But then I guess you're right. It's like anything is possible at this juncture. So
Yeah.
that could always be a possibility.
Gear up fast. We're about to get
I still
evil.
think it's gonna be like simple cell organisms. And
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is like that'll be the first discovery, because
Enemies
Mars
dropping into
has
the AO.
rovers on it today from NASA that have taken samples of what looks like fossilized bacteria on Mars rocks, and so they bring that back to the lab. They could say a year or maybe 5 years tops to get that back to the lab. They could say they found alien life, and that would be just a big game changer itself if they announce that. But yeah, to your point, like advanced Star Wars civilizations, like things like that, I don't think we're going to see them until we go out into the universe as a species. Humankind goes out, and that's probably like 1,000 years away in terms of being able to leave our solar system and our galaxy. Even that's pretty far away. Yeah.
or they know we're around, but they just avoid us.
Well, that's one of the hypotheses for the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox is a problem without a solution.
Resurgence.
And the problem is, if there's all of these life forms throughout the galaxy, which scientifically we think there are, then why have we not found any of them? And we already discussed solution one is just really rudimentary life that can't travel or let us know it's there. Solution two, which is scarier, is that they are advanced and they're all just kind of like hiding from each other. That's called the dark forest hypothesis, and that would be really interesting if that's true, but kind of conveys that the universe is a scary place if that's the solution to that problem. And then there's other things like just they are looking for each other, but the distance you have to travel is just so big. And then there's another answer to that. Have you heard of like multiple parallel universes and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So I think these are two separate ideas but related. Basically the idea is that life forms do exist, they just can't see each other, and the answer could be because it's a parallel universe or they're in a different dimension. And the different dimension thing is kind of interesting. I think that's maybe less likely but still possible. But the idea of a different dimension makes sense, where like look at 2D versus 3D. 2D has XY, 3D has XYZ. Like if you could be alive in a 2D dimension, you wouldn't know what a 3D being is. You wouldn't be able to see
Because
them.
you couldn't even perceive it.
Right, and there's illustrations of this that are interesting, where people say like, what would a 3D being look like in a 2D world? Like imagine you just put your finger on a piece of paper, like that's like a 3D being entering the 2D world, so to speak. And what would that look like to a 2D being? Well, it would just be a circle. There would be these circles appearing out of nowhere, like randomly all the time, and like no one would have any idea what's going on in 2D land. And so like, are some of these UFO sightings that manifest themselves in very strange ways that we don't understand, could those be 4D beings visiting our 2D world? You know, that's interesting to think about as a thought experiment in this.
Well, there's this it kind of builds with that, but so Marvel has this character called Galactus, and he's the guy who devours planets and shit
Gas
like
is
that.
closing in.
Well, anyways, every alien civilization sees him in a different way because they only perceive him and how they can conceive him or something like that. So he looks different for everyone. So one thing, he might look like some slug thing. To us humans, he looks humanoid, but no matter what, it's still coming to eat the planet alive. So you're talking about like that perception thing, where like, do they even perceive that that being in that way? Like, especially with that 3D thing, because you're right, if it's on the piece of paper, then the only thing that they're going to see is just that impression, that being pressed on there.
Yep. I think there's probably other life in just our plane of space, just 3D space. I think it's just pretty far away and not very advanced, and that's why we haven't found it yet. But there are scientists studying this all the time, like people that are part of the SETI mission, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and they're just constantly finding new planets every day almost that have biomarkers, which are basically like they can somewhat detect what gases are in their atmosphere from very far distances away, just by like how they shoot it with a laser, or they read it with an advanced telescope. They can detect what some of these chemicals are, and they're finding possibly Earth-like planets all over the galaxy. They're just super far away. So it's very possible there's things living on those planets. They're just like swimming around or running around, and they haven't invented rockets yet, or things like that.
Well, then, yeah, because then it's like at that point it kind of goes back to, like, are they even advanced enough to meet us and meet us at the gas station, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think the first thing we would see before we see some type of like alien on our doorstep would probably be like radio signals, some type of like alien-made communication, and then we would probably then know more about what is out there and then decide to go visit or not. I think that's how it would go down. Unless the government already knows these things and they're just keeping it a secret, But that could have already happened. They just haven't announced it to the public. That's possible.
Yeah, the government probably does know, because then it's like they're just not letting the cat out of the bag. I think that's why when you're seeing some of these UFO things, it was kind of like, it's like most people are like, oh yeah, it's going to be about the aliens. And really, it's probably just some foreign government flying a foreign object over, by the U.S.
Well, I mean, we were talking about
people in this building.
Ooh, okay. Are they aliens?
Definitely not aliens.
Okay, not interested. We were talking about like alien life, but I think it's almost a different topic entirely, talking about UFOs. Because so far, that is the most concrete evidence that the general public has about potential alien life. And I think the UFO videos that came out recently, like Tic Tac and Gimbal, those are worth watching if you or anyone hearing this hasn't seen those yet. Because they're not your typical, like, just like a white dot in the sky on a dark night. Like, they're craft that are intercepted by trained military pilots, and they're caught on camera. It's not like a high definition video. They're still like hundreds of feet or even miles away from these things, and you just see the outline, the heat signature. But they're objects because they're locked on by radar, and aircraft are chasing them. And if you look at the video of Tic Tac, for example, it's moving in ways that any type of vehicle known to mankind cannot move in. And like, not even just talking about planes, but any type of vehicle we have, it generally consumes energy and then either shoots it out of the back of the vehicle or uses, a mechanical device to generate motion from the vehicle. Like, for example, a rotor on a boat pushes water to move it, or a car rotates wheels on an axis to move it. Like, that's basically the only way you can move, as far as human beings know about. You can shoot something out the back, or you can harness that energy being burned to then generate kinetic force. But the way these things are moving, the Tic Tac, if you look at it, there's nothing shooting out of the back. You see no trail whatsoever of like exhaust or any type of thing burning out the back. There's nothing going out the back. And for a plane, as far as we know, the only way you can stay in the sky is to shoot something out the back and keep moving to where you're basically displacing the air molecules at a faster rate below you than it would take to fall. That's how you stay in the air. And you can either do that as a helicopter, you can push them down, or you can glide along them with a fighter jet or a plane, right? But nothing's shooting out the back, so that just rules out, number one, any type of human technology that we understand today being what is shown on that video. And then the second thing it's doing that's just wild, even wilder than that, is that it's spinning upside down while it's moving in a straight line. And again, if there were some type of propulsion going out of the back of that thing that we just couldn't see, that rules it out again, because you can't spin around and have propulsion out of your back of your vehicle and still go in a straight line. You'd be doing crazy corkscrews all over the place if you were doing that, right? So, and then the third thing, I don't think they show this on the video, but they were saying from the radar that they were seeing, these things were moving in ways that physics doesn't explain either, because they're just like moving at 90-degree angles when they're moving this fast. And you couldn't do that either. Like, things don't turn in 90-degree angles when they have any type of friction in the environment, like air. You just can't do that. If you watch the Tic Tac video and you're assuming that's a real thing caught on camera, which the best military technology tells us it is, then I'd like to hear your explanation for what it is. And if it's Russian technology, my answer is, how did Russians invent ways to get around gravity, basically, and get around physics? Because that's what you're seeing on that video.
I think with that, there's a lot of technology probably that's probably like advanced beyond like what is kind of like commercially available. It's like kind of like the best example I can ever give is like, okay, so the CIA back in the 60s and 70s, well, even back in the 60s, they had a heart attack. The CIA did. And you can watch a hearing, like a Senate hearing or a congressional hearing. This guy held up the heart attack. But yeah, he was holding it up. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that, you know, there's technology that was available that seemed like science fiction back then. They kind of like televisions. Like one of the first uses of a television was in an airplane. It was kind of like the first iteration of a Tomahawk missile.
Right.
And I think it was one of the JFK. It was one of the Kennedys that piloted one of the first things on it. But you know, that was some insane stuff back in the day, like a TV, like that. It was used for that application, and the thing for it to be commercially available for someone's house wasn't like, and that was like I think around like 1940s or something like that. But you know, basically they loaded this plane full of explosives, and somehow the plane was guided, and you use a TV or something like that. I can't remember all this stuff. That was like crazy. That would have been like if you told someone that back in the day, you know, when there was no TV or anything like that. That'd be pretty insane.
That's true.
So, and then that's like another thing with all this like AI, deep learning thing, stuff like that. The government probably already had some deep fake machine thing way ahead of the game. It's just that now it's becoming more commercially available for, you know, every Tom, Dick, and Sally to like play around with it. So when it comes to that Tic Tac thing, that's how I kind of imagine it. That it could be a scenario where it's just, you know, it's something really advanced and that, oh, it's like I want to drop that. But yeah, it's just something very advanced and, you know, like it may seem like it's unexplainable, but there's probably something to it that's like, maybe it looks like it's breaking the laws of physics when it's not, but it's hard to say because, you know, the only thing you have is that bad video, and then unless you're like sitting there checking it out, like, you know, checking what's under the hood, then you can't confirm like how it's doing what it's doing. Because someone's got to be able to pop open the hood and then be like, ah, that's how it's working. Because other than that, you can speculate all day long. It's like almost like a conspiracy theory. You know, there's only like a very partial evidence that you have, and then you just got to create all these theories on how it works, and then it's like a whole JFK assassination thing. It'd be like there's only so far you can go because, well, yeah, a lot of the information was classified. The best example I can say too about the whole classification of like different things, like it was only recently. Yeah, so there was this one. This was during the Cold War too, and the Cold War has so much fun stuff. But one of the things that was kind of like I didn't think it ever happened because I thought it would make a bigger splash, but it was confirmed that the U.S. military actually, like the Air Force, engaged with Russian fighter pilots from the Russian army in the air. And that was only declassified like recently, and that was over 60 years ago. So if there was something where like not even that was like open news back, like, if the U.S. government or even the military felt fit to like classify something as simple as just a skirmish in the air, between another foreign entity, then it's like as far as like technology or anything like that, I think it's all up in the air. Like especially if it's like technology that maybe other countries don't have. So if the government's willing to kind of like keep that like under wraps for decades, then any kind of crazy technology I'm pretty sure is in the same boat too, if not more so.
I'm not very surprised that they classified that. I think they did that probably because if it got out in the news, there would be like an obligation for the government to escalate and go to war. And the whole point of that period of time was like you don't want to go to war. That's when nuclear weapons were like in mass production, and you don't want to do that. It's almost like they're fighting secret wars with each other that they don't want the public to know about. As far as do they have like human-made technology that has some human origin, I think that's possible, and it probably can also coexist with the possibility that they have alien technology not of human origin. Everything you've said is true about the government. They classify everything. There's so many like just aircraft classified programs that just don't come out until like 20-30 years later. But some of these things just aren't showing physics that we know it. And you can say the government and scientists have, really rapidly progressed. Like, look at the atom bomb. They're getting able to, like, really manipulate, matter at the atomic level. But how do you manipulate gravity? I just don't see a scientific advancement coming from human beings in this century, even in this millennia, really, that would allow us to manipulate gravity.
Maybe they develop some type of thing that spins so fast it creates its own little gravity field.
We don't even understand gravity, so like that would be the hard part with being able to manipulate it. You don't even understand it yet. Scientists don't know what gravity is, and you've got people all around the world, scientists all around the world studying this. I don't think the government has enough money to have a secret society of scientists that have just like made 1,000 times more progress than people at MIT and Harvard and Yale and all of these places. That's my opinion.
We only know what we do know. So there could be stuff where they got hidden as far as like what kind of cool toys they have in the back room.
Yeah.
I mean like one thing that's been kind of cool to watch is like the robotics thing, like MIT where they had their walking robot guy, and how it's like I don't know 40 years of it kind of like just advancing. It's kind of neat to watch. But the only reason why I bring that up is I don't know, it's probably stuff that we don't even know about, and that's why I was like saying like there's probably we do understand gravity to a certain extent, maybe not every nuance to it because it's kind of like there's
we understand the symptom. Our understanding of gravity right now is similar to 500 years ago. If you got a cold, they would say, yeah, we understand what a cold is. You have a fever and a runny nose and produce a lot of mucus, but their explanation of why that happens was like, you have bad humors, and to treat it, you need to cut open your wrist and let the blood go out. Like, they really didn't understand it. You know what I mean? They understood the physical manifestation of that thing, but not what was happening to cause it. And that's like gravity. If you really look into gravity, people don't it's based on this idea that objects with more mass attract objects with less mass. But the more questions you ask about that, like why, there's really no good answer for that today. And so that's why I'm saying, like, the level of understanding it would take to do stuff like fly an object around with no propulsion and then rotate it and then break the laws of physics in terms of how it can move. That's like next level understanding that would take thousands of years of scientific research. And we've only been doing scientific research for less than 1,000 years, less than like 500 years in terms of like using devices and things like that. So I just don't see it. You can definitely argue that. I just don't see that Tic Tac object is man-made. And I'd like to be surprised. I'd like to hear how they did it if a human being invented that. I don't think they did.
Well, it could be a thing where it's like it's a piece of equipment that wasn't man-made, or maybe it is. Yeah, like maybe it's not a man-made piece of equipment, but it has like a battery strapped to it that is human-made. Or it could be a new like particle or some type of thing, kind of like the idea with the Hadron Collider, where possibly create new elements or something like that. So it could be like a newly created element that has those crazy properties.
Down to you, soldier.
Well, the material science of it would probably be something wildly different. And then the other question is, does Earth have that type of material even?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was created though, not. It's not a discoverable element. It has to be a created one.
You made the top 25.
So that's an interesting topic because there are like created elements on the periodic table, like way down the line, like at the bottom right of the table. But scientists have only generated those for like milliseconds in a lab, and then they disappear. And so they're not stable. They're not stable elements that you could use for any type of applied science at all. And you would need some of those chemicals to have, really advanced technology for some of these things. But we're still getting to the point. It's like saying, for example, some caveman dug a hole and found some oil, or they found twigs, and technically they've got what they need to make a fire and therefore to make a barbecue, but they just can't make a barbecue. They're just not that level of sophistication, and that's where we're at with gravity right now. Like, the argument essentially is like, well, even if it breaks gravity, humans could have invented that. But that's a lot like saying, because cavemen have fire, or 200 years ago people have oil, that they can invent and mass produce cars. It's just not possible with their current understanding of that thing,
Well, this depends on what your understanding of that time is and what you have available. That's what I was like saying when it comes to so like the Manhattan Project, no one knew about the Manhattan Project. Well, select few. But as far as like the wider American public, it wasn't really revealed. I'm really curious even what was the American public told like after when it was dropped.
After the bomb was dropped, basically.
Yeah.
Then the cat was out of the bag.
Yeah, but the reason why I bring it up like that, because there was probably someone who was like saying, like, well, we can't split an atom. At that time, humans can't split an atom until it happened.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of like the thing there too, where it's a possibility that it is some kind of created element, and that's our understanding currently. Because it's not like they're advertising, we created a gravity-defying element, and now we're gonna put it in our planes and stuff. It's like it's just
yeah.
It's like we only know what we do know. But as far as like I guess current understanding, yeah, it does kind of like put a wrench into things, because the current understanding, at least the current accepted understanding, is that it's not possible.
And I think that would be maybe the only explanation for human beings inventing that, is that maybe there is some type of like
Special orders
force
rescinded.
or
Resume
element
normal
or
operations.
molecule that creates gravity that we don't understand yet. And if they found it, they could create that. But it's still a big stretch, because even if you look at atom bombs, I don't think you can really say we're controlling atoms. You just figured out how to split it in a certain way to release vast amounts of energy. So it's not like really harnessing it's just kind of blowing up something, you know. But if you look at, let's take it for example here, nuclear fission versus nuclear fusion. So atom bombs are nuclear fission. You're splitting an atom to create a
Because
giant
fusion's not
release
possible
energy.
yet. That's why that whole idea of doing cold fusion, because we don't have anything that can store it. Well,
Yes.
like a regular fusion, because the sun's basically a giant fusion reaction.
Get ready. Resurgence
Yes,
window's
and
about
so
to close.
that's my argument here, is that even if we can do fission, it's orders of magnitude more complicated to do fusion. And that's kind of like what gravity bending devices would be like. Like, let's say you first can understand gravity and maybe lessen gravity or amplify gravity. That would be the equivalent of step one to like that we saw with making an atom bomb. That would be the equivalent of fission. But to be able to bend gravity to your will and basically turn it off, then we're really getting into like sci-fi stuff, like fusion stuff. Like that's the same stuff that you would need to create your own halo ring or artificial planet and like artificially generate gravity. That's just hundreds of years in the advanced science, you know. So that's why I think it's still not human technology, even if we can do what seems like really wild things like split atoms. It's just orders of magnitude less advanced than actually controlling gravity.
That's what I was like saying. It could have been like something where it's a new man-made element that could be pulling it off. If it's a new man-made element, it could be like one of those things where it only lasts for kind of like when you were saying those elements that were created in the lab, where it's like it only worked for a limited amount of time, and then it's like then it doesn't work. So that machine, that the Tic Tac, you know, it could be a situation where it only operates in that weird way for a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I think there's just so much unknown with gravity that it's hard to even... It's weird, but a more logical explanation is we didn't invent that, and it came from a different world. When you get into, like, manipulating gravity, it's just so complex. So, I think...
I'm saying that, well, because, like, so there's this fun sci-fi story, so there's this game called BioShock Infinite, and the premise of that is instead of a city under the sea like some of the other BioShock games, it's a city in the sky. And the thing that, like, at first when you look at it, it looks like they have these giant hot air balloons lifting it up, but that's not really the case. That just helps it maneuver, it doesn't help lift it. Because in that universe, someone created a special element that... Oh no. So someone created a special element that allowed it to like defy gravity or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how the city was made. So they had like, I forgot how it worked, but it's like it generate like it I don't know if it was like it defied gravity in the sense that it like was weightless, or that it just made whatever it was attached to like very lightweight. You know, you'd be like almost like a tenth of what you used to weigh. But in that universe, they made an element that was able to do that. And so that's the only, and then, so your scenario, so they kind of like tweak it a little bit earlier, at least not my idea that maybe it is a man-made thing. It's just that it only can operate in a very small amount of time in that window. And that's like when they create that element, it's like, okay, we got 10 minutes. This is all we can do. 10 minutes and that's it. And so
but here's the other thing. If that's made by humans, and let's assume it's some type of militarized group that's making that, then why do they even let the Air Force follow it? Why is there not like some command that comes down from high above that tells them to stop following that thing? Why are they telling them go look at that thing? You know what I mean? Unless it's Russian or Chinese or something.
Unless they want to compare.
It probably seems unlikely.
Maybe they want to see how good, you know, the radar system works or how good the targeting system works on it. So then then they can like develop like stuff to make it to where, well, if our stuffs can target it, then that means other countries can possibly target it in the future too. But if we make it to where even our own stuff can't target it, then that means other countries probably wouldn't have the capability to target said item in the sky. So that could be a thing too, where they want to also, because you already have a lot of great toys that kind of like test against it. So then it's like, why not use it? So then you can, if it can be targeted, it'd be like, okay, what can we do to make it to where it can't be? So it's like if most of our hardware can't target it, then that means most other places won't have a fat chance. That's why I used that one spy plane earlier, where the U.S. government had a spy plane flying over Russia, but it was flying so high in the air, the Russians didn't have a missile at that time that could hit it that high up. But they knew it was there. Like, they were able to see it up there, in their radar and all that stuff, but they just couldn't reach it. Well, eventually they did develop a missile that did reach it and knock it out of the sky. The guy got taken prisoner and stuff, and I think they had some type of exchange too. But anyways, so the Russians knew about it, they just couldn't hit it. So in this scenario, as far as that, like if it is like if it's a U.S. thing, it could be like where they don't tell the other guys about it, and then they want to see how fast can like a modern military detect it, and how fast can they even lock onto it and stuff like that. So then it'd be like, okay, well if they can do that, like it was within however many operational parameters, like it was this, it took them this long to spot it, and it was this hard for them to actually target the thing. So then whatever future iterations, when they bring out that little Tic Tac thing, then they can be like, all right, this is going to be the next, like round 2, and it's going to be even better.
I guess one question I would have there is, in the previous examples, the military in America didn't acknowledge something because, they didn't want to show that they had inferior technology, or they didn't want to give away a current level of technology. Like, they basically waited 30 years until it was irrelevant, right? Like, the SR-71 Blackbird wasn't declassified for it wasn't declassified for like decades, because at that point when they declassified it, they already had better technology sites, and no one cared if people knew about the Blackbird. But then why would they declassify the TikTok video and say they have no idea what it is, and declassify it only like 5 years after it was filmed? A relatively short amount of time, where you would assume even if they had that technology, they wouldn't have advanced upon it a lot within 5 years' time, probably. Why would they declassify it and say they have no idea what it is? What strategic advantage does that give them?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, because it's like I would, it could be a thing where it's like plausible deniability, where it's just like, we didn't do this when really it was type thing. So it could be that type of thing where it's just because they want to see how other nations might react to the news of something like that, like how they might change their resources when the U.S. announces, we found this crazy thing that we couldn't even target. So then it could be like a thing like that too.
That is maybe like a convincing argument to me, is that the government would put stuff out to kind of get more funding for itself, for the military. That's plausible. But I'm still evaluating that video based on the physics that it displays, and I don't think human beings understand physics enough to be able to break it. We basically just kind of roll with physics. If you look at cars and planes, cars are designed in a lab to be aerodynamic and work with air at a high speed and be more energy efficient. Everything we've done with vehicles and anything like that, it's working with known physics, right? But this is taking a 180 with known physics, and it would just require so much technology to be different than anything that's known publicly, that it just seems like it's not like a single breakthrough. It's like a quantum leap that would take 1,000 or more years of research to build something like that. And that's why I still think it's the aliens, man. alien.
I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, it could be aliens on like a safari cruise, more or less.
It could be. And if you're talking about like how would alien craft probably show up at Earth at first, it would probably be a drone, right? Like when we see some base in Russia or whatever, we don't like send someone over in a Ford pickup truck with a box of donuts and like break in. Like that's old school spy stuff, right? Like we don't do that anymore. We send a drone over at like 40,000 feet or whatever crazy altitude, and like it's like camouflaged and radar deflective, and like we just send an automated plane over there, right? And that's probably what aliens would do too, especially if you're trying to like search the universe for other life. You wouldn't like go to every place yourself. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just like that. Why man in the first place? It's kind of like, what are we sending to Mars right now? We're not sending people at the moment. We're sending a little robot drone to go up there.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's just the logical thing to do. And you would assume that aliens, whatever form they take, if they're advanced enough to like travel the universe, they would be logical to some degree, or at least their efforts to travel the universe would be logical. Like you're not going to try to waste gas or like go to places that you don't think life exists. They're going to be logical about it. And so they're probably the most logical thing to do at first is send out a bunch of drones, right? And so that would probably be my explanation, if I have to give one, for the Tic Tac thing, is that it's moving in ways that, like, if there was any life form in there, and it was subject to gravity, its head would be a crushed tomato. Like, the G-force in that thing, turning 90 degrees at that speed, it would just explode, basically. And so it's probably an automated drone, and it's probably like somehow manipulating gravity to be able to travel places effortlessly, you know, like similar to your comparison to atom bombs. Like if you could take an orange and you had full control over all of the atoms in that orange and you could split all of them, then you could probably have enough power to blow up planets. So it's probably whatever technology is behind that gravity thing, it's probably just like harnessing existing forces or materials and then just kind of like bending them to be able to do those things. And its power could be abundant if you do that. You just need any type of atom or whatever force really makes gravity work. And it's probably present throughout the galaxy. And it could be something like dark matter. I mean, that's probably, you know, related to gravity, and we also have no idea what dark matter is. We just know it's everywhere, and so these things are probably related. We just haven't put the puzzle pieces together enough as a species, I think, to be able to do the things that you see in that video. That's what I think.
No, I mean that makes perfect sense, because it's like there's only so far that we can go currently with our current understanding and what's available.
1,000 years from now, I was telling another person about this, like, it would be interesting, not even 1,000, just 100 years from now, if you were to open a first grade science textbook, maybe 5th grade, right? Like elementary school textbook, and just see what the definition of gravity is 100 years from now. I bet you it would be something totally different. And that just shows like how little we understand about gravity.
Or it may not advance that much at all. Might be where other fields, understandings in different fields advance more than others.
When it does, the definition of gravity will almost certainly be rewritten. Like it will. Like we just our explanation for it is a big thing pulls in a small thing. Like that is just such like a high level explanation for such a complicated thing like gravity. Like it's gonna be fleshed out more, and when it does, it's just gonna show we have good progress with science, but there's just so much we don't understand at a fundamental level about physics and gravity, and I think it's gonna take a lot of time to understand that we just haven't caught up yet, basically.
No confirmed kill.
Yeah. Didn't get him, but
Enemy soldier incoming.
Oh, I downed him. I downed him when he was going up this little thingy here.
You're losing ground. Move it.
Darn it. Go for it, Malcolm. use your nunchucks on the helicopter. Yeah. There you go. You got him.
Your squad's in the safe zone.
Oh, I think we squad wiped them. That was pretty wild. I was in the water and I had my pistol and I was shooting up this little rope thing and I downed the guy. And then you pistol whipped the helicopter. That was pretty good. Do you think if we did find like another species that was at the same level as humans in terms of technology and culture and all that, do you think we would coexist or we'd try to kill each other?
I don't know. That's a good question. The cynical side would say that, you know, our Earth would try and control them somehow, like gain dominance. But it's hard to say. I don't know if it could be peaceful. I really don't.
It's kind of like what's kind of interesting to me about this is like if you look at like predators or animals in nature that are like almost the same level of threat to each other. There's like a moment where like they'll encounter each other and they'll just kind of size each other up, like stare each other down, and then they'll either walk away or they'll just like go at
Duke it out.
right? And so like yeah, exactly. And it like let's say like lions and gazelles in the savannah, like that's a predator-prey relationship. Like as soon as a gazelle, oh shoot, yeah. Oh, I have incendiary. I didn't know that.
Dang. He's coming up to you. His buddy's reviving.
Darn it! Almost got him, my bad.
Less than 25, we're still
As soon as a gazelle sees a lion, like it takes like a tenth of a second and it runs away. But like if you have like, let's say like a bear and
A mountain lion or a wolf.
mountain lion, yeah, or a lion and an elephant maybe is a good example. Like they'll kind of look at each other and they'll kind of figure out what they're gonna do, right? And I think it would be a little bit like that with aliens. I think like if you were to see an alien outside your door, like let's say it was walking away and you were walking another side of the street and you both just stopped and looked at each other, I think it would be pretty similar to that. Like you would be like just frozen there looking at each other, and then you'd wait for the other person to move. And then based on what their move was, you would then determine your move. I think it would be a lot like that. If they came here like with weapons and stuff, I think then we'd shoot bombs at them. But I think if you just kind of like saw them land here, it would be very much like just wait it out and see what happens, you know?
Yeah,
Size
if it's
each
something like
other
that, I'd say that too. It'd be kind of like, all right, are you coming over here to get a Happy Meal, or are you coming here to like, you know, see if this is going to be some new property that you can like take over?
And that's the other thing too is like, why would someone come that far away
Gear up fast. We're about
just to
get
say
evil.
hello, right? Like it probably seems kind of suspicious even if they come here, like that they might be wanting to like have some
Enemies are
malicious
dropping into the
intent.
area.
It may not
You
even
know-
be that. It might be a thing where it's so monumental for them too that they want to experience that as well. Where it's like that'd be something change. Like that'd be like, I don't know. There's like certain things within history that change that race forever. Like kind of like how like back, well, hell, you even go 200 years ago. Like getting from point A to point B took a long time for most people. Now it's like it's really easy
Enemy
for
soldier
someone, you know,
incoming.
for a regular person to go from point A
Playtime's
to point
over.
B.
Stand by
Whereas
for
like back in the day, it'd be
deployment
months
to the
to like
Yeah.
go across the U.S. would take months or even years. And that was something that changed as far as like being able to travel more efficiently or I guess quickly. That changed everything. So I think for some alien species to kind of like go meet another race, that might be something where it's like that would change everything, because that to them they might have the same idea, be like, what if we're the only ones out there? And then they see us and like, holy,
Survive to
you know,
redeploy
crap
fallen
waffles.
teammates.
There's another
Kill
thing
to
out
bring
there.
them back fast.
And then us being like, probably
Set a drop point for your
probably
squad,
like the thing of
soldier.
just being able to meet them is like, it'd be worth it, because it'd change everything for them or for us. I mean, look at how much trouble is going to Mars just to poke around dead rocks.
Enemies dropping into the AO.
Yeah, that is a good point about people going to Mars.
Secure the supply
I would
boxes.
look.
Locations are marked on your
This
attack
is
map.
tricky because you can't always like look at like how humans behave to determine how aliens would behave. But if they behave anything like us, like any time a new human society has gone far distances to meet another human society, like they've never just let them be. They've never been like, oh cool, hey Native Americans, you've got, you know, cool arrowheads. That's awesome. We like those. We'll just catch you later. Like no, they wanted to take the land, right? And that's like similar with like
Two supply
every type
boxes
of,
secured. One remaining.
you know, new societies interacting with each other throughout history, like, you know, Americans and the English going to Japan and basically being like, Japan kind of did that. They're like, oh cool, like, you know, Western people, you have sandwiches or however it went down. Like that's cool, but we actually like living here by ourselves and we don't want anything to do with you. So please go home and see you never again. Like that was what the Japanese wanted. And then Western people were like, no, we're actually going to make sure that we basically implement trade routes with you and you integrate with the modern world. And if you don't want to do that, then we can go to war. That's fine.
Too bad.
And like, it's just kind of like you can't leave well enough alone. You know, like once you discover some brand new society, like people are just pretty nosy, right? And I feel like. Do you feel like if aliens came here and we like had, you know, a sit down and we made them tea and like we had a good talk with them, like they'd just go away? Or we would just go away? We wouldn't try to go follow them back or like stow away on their ship or something? Like at that point you just kind of like, they just become so connected, like you don't just go back to how it was before. You know what I mean?
Well, because everything changes again, because it's like, that's so novel that something like that even happened. But no, I think well then it's just the genie's out of the bottle. Like you can't.
25 left.
I think then it can't be a scenario where like, hey guys, we met you. All right, we'll just never talk to you ever again. I don't think it can ever be like that because it'd be like
Your squad made
it fundamentally changes everything as far as like knowing that, you know, we got neighbors in the galaxy.
Right. It just changes so much. Yeah.
Well, then, plus it's also easier for them to keep tabs and being like, all right, did they change something? I just think because of like how monumental that would be, that just definitely couldn't change. And plus, both sides I think would want to keep tabs on the other.
I think so. I think they would. I think they definitely try to keep tabs on each other. The other scenario that I think is just as likely, and I think would be much better, would be if we kind of form an alliance with people, like the alien species. And you see this a lot in like science fiction. Like one of the reasons that in some alien movies, the reason the alien visits Earth is like they need help, or they say there's going to be a war like 100 years from now, and we're trying to form an alliance. Will you join us? I think that's just as likely as like any of the other potential situations. And that would probably be the best. I think that would be one of the few ways that we would want to cooperate and coexist with aliens, is if it was some type of like alliance type of thing. Like Star Wars. Star Wars is like based on an alliance, right? There's like the Republic and like, you know,
yeah,
the Rebels.
well, I mean,
like
you have a whole galactic society, and the Rebel Alliance was, you know, it had all these different alien races against the Empire, whereas the Empire was just, you know, it still ruled over these alien races, but stuff like that. But as far as like serving in the Imperial military, it was all human only type of thing. That's why the Rebel Alliance was doing pretty good, because they're like, hey, we don't care if you're human or not, as long as you don't like those Imperial guys, you're like A-okay with us.
The other explanation for aliens coming over is also just as likely, is like they ran out of resources and they need a new place to crash. And I think
you ever seen District 9?
Yeah, I saw District 9, but that's an interesting movie because the premise of that is that they do coexist. Like, the aliens don't just take over Earth, they come over here and they kind of, like, coexist, but there's, like, you know, kind of like racism and stuff like that.
They were put in their own, like, you know, aliens only, like, field. It was like the slums, and that's where only they could live at.
Yeah, that whole movie, I watched it more as like a metaphor for like human society, but I think that's one way it could happen. I think it's a lot less likely. I don't think you go travel
All right, your
around
squad's in the
the
safe
universe to like get a worse position in your society. I think you just do it to like try to conquer whatever planet you go to if you're like a spacefaring colony. But maybe they could be a lot more advanced than humans and a lot more just as a society, and they would just find some way to coexist. It's possible, you know. I think likely though, at least on the human side of how we'd respond, the more likely way we would coexist would be if there was some mutual threat and we both had to work together. That's the only way I see it, you know, probably happening out that way. Man, this guy's running all over the place.
Enemy destroyed. Use the attack map to hunt down the rest of them.
Even with the stimmy, I was having a hard time keeping up with them.
Yeah, that was tricky.
Yeah, we're talking about like, would it be like mutual if aliens, like if aliens found, like, you know, if we met them, you know, they had the same kind of like tech level as us,
Good work down there.
could we be mutual, like, you know, like be friends, or would it be kind of like, is it going to be immediately hostile type thing?
So what causes wars? This is a philosophy question.
Dang, you already got knocked.
Generally speaking,
Be advised, resurgence is no
resources,
longer active.
you know,
This is for keeps.
an unequal distribution of resources and the desire for having more resources, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's usually the biggest thing that pushes people out.
It can be that, or it can be like xenophobia, or like, you know, judgment against the other.
Culture.
But yeah.
Culture says conquer, like the cons, right?
Yeah.
So, if they are spacefaring civilization,
Hmm.
well, unless you're talking about us now, because us now we haven't reached that point. But at a certain point, we're gonna get to the point where we can go out into space and get any resource we want. So there's no scarcity of resources. So the big thing would be,
Why would
are they gonna
wanna
conquer
come
us?
here?
Yeah, why would they want to conquer us? We're a tiny planet. We get okay resources. Not enough to justify going thousands of light years away, right?
When there's other planets where you can probably create
Not even
this, you know,
planets.
well, that's
Not
what I'm
even
saying. Like,
planets. Go to asteroid belts and comets.
I think it would be for planetary resources. I think it's probably not that easy for even like a space traveling society to just make a new planet that's habitable. You probably need to terraform it, and it's more or less like gentrification, right? Like, why do people buy? Right though, like it's just aliens
Well,
are
it'd be
not
like-
people in the
They're
galaxy.
putting trendy
might not
coffee
Earth.
shops all over our planet.
They're putting a brewery.
And high density apartments.
Yeah, they're like maybe that's not a good metaphor, but the point being, like, they like the area, they just don't like the people living there, so they want to like get rid of the people living there. I could see that being a valid thing that happens with aliens traveling the universe, you know?
All bounty targets are KIA. Well done.
Yeah, but it's gonna be like that's so much effort for just finding a different planet, though. That's my thing. Unless their culture is like, hey,
Well, it's probably not. They probably wouldn't come here unless they were fairly certain they could wipe us out if that was their goal, right? Like, you're not gonna go to someplace and kick your butt and you're gonna try to fight. Like, most people just wouldn't do that, right?
well, here's the thing: space warfare isn't cool. Space
Halo makes
warfare,
it cool.
yeah, but it's unrealistic.
I guess we don't know. We don't know what realistic space warfare is.
Here's what realistic warfare in space would be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab an asteroid. I'm gonna fucking tether it, send some missiles on it, and send it straight for your planet.
Got
Yeah.
4 remaining.
Well, I got
You
the
can't
high ground.
you can't blow it up because then you got a shotgun effect going on. That doesn't stop the momentum. It's gonna hit the planet and kill everything. Then when I go back to my planet and come back, everything will be regrown.
Oh, like just
Nice
wait a
and
couple, like
clear.
quite a few years.
Yeah, by the time it takes for you to go
Possible.
back home and then come there or send the message, hey, we did it, now send the thing, by the time they get there.
That's possible, but if that's their strategy, I feel that humans have a pretty good chance, because like that's probably one of the first militarized space technologies we'll develop, is just defending ourselves against asteroids, you know? Because that's a relatively common thing that will happen with or without aliens, probably.
Well, here's the thing. There's not much we can do.
Well, I think it depends on your
You can
technology.
get lucky and shift it just enough T-force. Blow a missile up right next to it and just, a degree off and it'll miss our planet.
The enemy
I
took
think it
down
depends
one,
on the
but won't get 'em back.
technology. I think you can probably blow it up into small enough pieces with like very advanced laser technology to where the rest of it just burns up in the atmosphere. But it's possible.
Here's the thing. Like, when you try to blow it up, all that matter, that mass, is still going towards the planet. You just create a shotgun effect. You got buckshot instead of a slug.
Well, yeah, but I guess my point there is just that asteroids technically hit Earth every day. They're just small enough to where they burn up in the atmosphere.
Oh, those,
so
yeah.
If you could blow it up.
We're grabbing something the size of the moon, though. Half the size of the moon or so.
That would be tough. Don't get me wrong. I think. But if they could do that, why would they need to even travel here? You know what I mean? Why would they travel here just to kick a moon at our Earth? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's what I was saying. It's so much easier just to grab the asteroid and mine the resources off of that
Unless
than
they
it
just,
is
the
to
real
even
estate.
deal.
Kind of like they want the riverside like the lakeside condo or something like that. Could be something like
Yeah,
that.
but here's the thing. We have an ever-expanding real estate when it comes to the galaxy.
Or it could be a thing where it's like Warhammer 40k, where it's almost like an Imperial Crusade, where they don't like the Xenos, and we're the Xenos.
But you also bring it up. I mean, if you're talking about like our technology level now, even in 40k, they found alien races with like the comparable of our technology, right? Even advanced, and the Imperial man just leaves them alone because they're not. It's not even worth it. They only care about
the Tau thing.
Not just the Tau. They found planets with like aliens on it, and they just go, well, that's not worth it, and just move on to the next one and reclaim the ones with people already on it. I mean, if it's in the way, they'll blow them up, but it's kind of like it's really not worth the resources.
It's an interesting point. Well, we were talking about different scenarios where humans and aliens might choose to coexist, and so I think personally, and especially based on what we said, like, if they want our resources, they wouldn't come here to play nice with us. But I think a scenario where they would coexist or try to is if like there's a mutual threat and they're trying to form an alliance. What are your thoughts on that?
If they're that desperate.
But it's better than they're trying to blow us up, don't you think?
But what is trying to blow us up is the question.
But at least you've got a chance, right? Like
Maybe it's some type of like collective type organism, like that's trying to like basically just absorb everything. It's just like, hey, we found this scary thing out there. We accidentally kicked the hornet's nest. We need some help here.
What, the indomitable human spirit?
No, they just need some extra cannon fodder. It's just like they need some extra. Like even it's like 1% helpful. It's just like anything. Maybe delay the inevitable type scenario. Oh, if you don't know what we're talking about, there's this one, kind of like Star Wars and Star Trek and all that, there's this one science fiction setting called Warhammer 40,000. And it's like humanity 38,000 years in the future from now. And it's almost like the best way to kind of like explain it, it's like pretend you give like medieval times, like where, those people were very superstitious, heavily into the faiths and stuff like that. And give them space technology, like all this crazy stuff, and then put them in a galaxy where they're very if you don't look as so much as a human, then you're going to be treated like less than filth, and if you're an alien, good luck, because then you're going to be they're going to try and exterminate you. I'm sending you an invite, Phil. My thing, because when we lost that last match, my stuff got locked up.
No worries.
But yeah, like I said, I think that's what the scenario would be. The Warhammer 40,000 thing, that it's just like very xenophobic and stuff like that. But kind of like what Kevin was saying earlier, it's like generally though, like depending upon like the alien race, like if it's not worth the trouble bothering with it, they'll just leave it alone and maybe come and like sweep up the I guess because they view them as pests almost. They'd be like sweep them up later. Now if they're an actual threat, then they'll dedicate resources. But it's kind of like almost like a just pest control, really. It's just like, they're not a problem right now. We'll just come back later. So there's this one alien race in that universe
Even they are bound by their resources. They have limited resources for the galaxy.
Yeah, so it's like, are we going to waste our time and like stomp on these ants, today? It's like, well, we only have so much weapons. We got to go to this sector over here because these guys are needing support because they're fighting this other alien faction that's way more dangerous than, these ants over here.
I think you could safely assume if they're conqueror aliens, they probably don't need to just go to one planet. Like, they probably have diversified enough where if one planet was at risk, they could evacuate and go to, like, the 10th planet they own. So I think if they come to our planet as conquerors, they're expansionists, right? And so I think if there's one alien race that works that way, there's probably another alien race that works that way. And this is where you get into alliance territory, where you have different alliances fighting against each other. And they would knock on our door and say, basically, oh, the other guy's coming here to kill you. Do you want to join us? You know what I mean? I think at a certain point, they're not just looking for other places to crash at. They're kind of looking to, like, dominate the universe when you reach a certain point of sophistication. And there would be alliances, most likely, to be able to do that, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's, like, one thing, like, this kind of doesn't really go into alien talk so much, but in Dune... Like, in the Dune universe, like, there is no aliens, really. Like, the only alien, really, there is the worms on that planet Dune.
Not intelligent life.
Yeah, no intelligent alien life. But the thing is... Yeah?
Well, if you read the books, they leave it out, kind of not to freak people out. So it's kind of like, hey, they know about it, but they won't let people near it.
Well, because the reason why... Because I've gotten up to the point of... crap. So Frank Herbert's, like, the last book that he had was, like, I say Chapter House Dune.
Children of Dune, I think, is the last one he was involved with.
No, it was Chapter House. So yeah, it was like Heretics, and then there's Chapter House. And then his son, working with another author, like friend of his, the son then finished the series with the two last books. It was like Hunters and I think Sandworms of Dune or something like that. But in that one, they had the possibility, so they had this thing called the Atomic, like, Accord or something like that, where the houses couldn't use the atomics, their nukes on one another. The only time they can use it if there's like an alien or something like that. If there's an alien threat, then they can use the nukes on them. But the thing was, as far as there was no crazy threat like that. The only recent threat that they had that was like threatening humanity was like, basically Skynet, but on Dune levels, and that was about the only thing they had. And that's why if you ever watch those movies, that's one of the reasons why, like, they wanted to advance humanity by evolving it further. So they have these doctors where he can touch you and he can basically tell what kind of malady you're having. And then they have people that are basically like supercomputers where they can, like, you give them a math problem, they're going to do something crazy with it. But it goes further where it's like, it's not just being a human calculator, but also being used for, like, they're doing this. It's like almost like a strategist in a sense, where they'd explore all these different scenarios that could be, happening. But in that one, they didn't have any intelligent, like, alien life. And that the way that they kind of treated the alien thing was anything that was not human. So, like, the reason why I bring it up like that is that, let's say if you have, like, not split personalities, but you're somehow, like, not yourself, like, because it gets kind of confusing, but, because they explore genetic memories in that work. Kind of like Assassin's Creed.
Oh, that's you. Yeah.
Where in Assassin's Creed, where you can explore your genetic ancestor thousands of years ago. Well, in that one, the danger that may come from it is that those ancestral memories, like those personalities, might take over you, and so then you're not human anymore because some foreign entity kind of like took over you, but it was really just some genetic like personality that's like taking over. So that was like the only thing when it came to the Dune books where they're kind of like speaking of like the abomination or like the kind of like something that was not human in a sense.
Interesting.
But no, there was no intelligent alien life, but it didn't really matter.
Known.
Yeah, well, known. That's a good point of bringing up too. Not known. So, and in that
The whole
one,
Mason Guild thing.
well, that's the funny part because it's like even though there's no intelligent alien life that they know of, but in what's so weird is that because of humanity being so far in the future, is that some of them have kind of like evolved in their own special ways that almost makes them like their aliens. It's like when Kevin was just talking about the navigators. The navigators are these like they used to be
aliens.
Yeah, they're basically aliens because what happened is, you know, that the spice that's on that planet Dune. These navigators, they used to be human at one time, but they just were so addicted to it and so immersed into it, their bodies started to become dependent on it and started morphing around the use of it to the point where if they don't have it, they'll die. And so they need a constant supply of the spice. But they totally look.
They have
don't
vacuums for the tanks, so any little bit that leaks out, they can suck it out and filter it and put it back in.
Yeah,
that's how they need a constant like hit of it.
Exactly, and then there's another alien race. Well, I'm just gonna say because they're all almost alien in a sense, but then there's one that's called the Twi'leksu, where they're basically face shifters and stuff like that. They're shorter than most humans, and their skin's like pale and stuff. But their claim to fame is that they do a lot of genetic manipulation. So they're like kind of like like if you're one to have a poodle that's like all these crazy colors, they can do it. If you need someone to be cloned just based off the scrapings of their fingernail, they can do it. Even though, because even at the very end of the series, you don't see any other aliens. The only one really is just the worms. But as far as like intelligent, the humans are so like because it's almost like thousands upon thousands of years. All of them kind of like evolve in certain ways to where it's like they'd be unrecognizable to us. Even the people who do look like humans, because of how they act, it's like we'd be kind of like look at them weird if they were talking about certain things because the way that they act is almost way out of the norm for us even.
But that's kind of on a time scale that's kind of like fantastical. Like they find some weird chemical that alters them within a few generations. That's not how like it would play out if, let's say, you have some humans living on Mars. Like within like maybe a few generations, you would notice some differences, but they would still look like humans. It would be more like health differences.
You never know.
But it wouldn't have anatomical differences within 100 years. It would take thousands of years, 100,000.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Less than that, I would say probably within 100 generations.
So 100 generations, assuming 100 years, that would be like 100,000 years or 10,000.
Well, a generation is 20 to 30 years.
10,000 years, yeah. Or okay. Yeah.
So let's say 200 years.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how much people on the islands that like the people with they re-evolve like the night vision, like the third, not the cone and the rods, but the third thing that gives mammals night vision in their eyes. Or the tribe that re-evolved the third eyelid so they can see underwater.
Well done.
Bunch of stuff like that. That takes off within about I don't know, 100 generations maybe.
Only
Comes back, even less than that. I mean, it depends on how big of a difference you want. You know what I mean?
Well, because it's all about the adaptation. Well, because it's kind of like about the thing, like, you know, use it or lose it type scenario. It's like if your body doesn't really need it, right? It's not gonna be there. No. But that's a very common misconception. I've taken whole semester-long classes on this subject.
I think you'd see differences, but do you think they would be unrecognizable as humans within 200 years?
Oh, we want to stay unrecognizable.
Like aliens. That's one of the trademarks of an alien is that they don't look like... They're clearly not human, right?
We're going to have to put a line in the sand here and say at what point are they not human? Because Neanderthals weren't human.
Well, I think if someone saw a Neanderthal today, they wouldn't say it's an alien. They'd be like, wow, that guy looks pretty different.
Maybe we're saying like, not human to where they're kind of like they get to the levels of the navigators, or they look like
that on its own. There's so many factors that come into play, but yeah, 1,000 generations maybe, 2,000.
So like 1,000 years? No, more than 1,000. 20.
I would say between 10,000 and 100,000 years.
I could see that playing out, yeah. But that's
Because
on
you
a pretty big
remember
map.
early humans, 10,000, 15,000 years ago, from the drawings and the reconstructions, looked nothing like any of us today.
Well, their head shape is different, but they still generally had the same skin color for their geographic region they were in. They had
did not.
hair on their head.
2 eyes, hair.
Do I?
Well, they
Yeah.
weren't like purple or orange. They were like white,
Pack 6.
beige, or brown.
There were tribes
Oh.
with orange skin. And
Orange skin? Really?
Orange-ish.
Really? How did they know that from like fossils and stuff?
DNA and putting it together. It's all speculation, so take it with a grain of salt.
That would be interesting to me.
But
if that
there's people with
was-
blue skin in Kentucky.
Well, that's because of like like chemical things, and it's like a medical condition, right?
And that's that's evolution right there.
No, everyone that's had that, they like can trace it to like some medical condition or some chemical.
Which is evolution.
But
you have
why
to
doesn't it
define-
happen to if it were to happen to everybody in Kentucky or have a tribe of blue people that lived all at once, then it would be evolution. You know what I mean?
Well, not exactly. So define evolution for me. It's actually, or if you want me to do it.
I'm not a specialist, but evolution, generally speaking, is that species will adapt over long time frames in
No.
ways that are advantageous for their survival.
That's
And
natural selection. That's not evolution.
well, natural selection and evolution are two sides of the same coin. It's happening over many.
They are
many
mutually
millennia.
exclusive. They can be mutually exclusive. So this is a very big nuance. So it's not like you're right there, right? And that's like better than most people I talk to do, Phil. So it's like, first of all, thank you for that, because there's some stupid people out there. So evolution is the change in the gene allele frequency over time. Has
And then what
nothing to do with natural selection.
But
Mutation.
what causes it? I guess. Can you
Gene
say-
gene exchange during fertilization and mutation.
Okay, but now you're getting to the. I get your point, and I guess where I would still maybe push a little bit that they're related, and you need one to have the other, is that gene selection and reproduction doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's typically speaking the most successful people within that species that reproduce until you get to like societies and things like that. So
Natural
maybe
selection,
today,
yeah.
So I
That
see
natural selection is going to further that evolution, but evolution is an unguided process that happens at random.
So I can agree with you now, because I think what you're talking about now is that today we don't have natural selection. Today we just have evolution. Is that what
Artificial
you would
selection.
Yeah.
We still have
Yeah.
a little bit of natural selection. That's never going to go away. Well, I don't know, but it's never going to completely go away for us. So
Yeah.
all evolution is simply we have 10 people, one person has A, 8 people have B, one person has C, right? And everybody with B, I'm sorry, but this new virus you have no immunity to. So now we have A and C. And then
Yeah.
we go further down the line and it says, okay, those and that the C let's say the A frequency is more prevalent, and it goes, sorry, but everybody with the C one, that's actually a genetic defect that over time makes you infertile. That's natural selection. A is evolved, has evolved, and has been lucky enough to survive through natural selection.
Yeah, I think it would play out, but I don't
Malaria.
know if it would
Sickle
play out
cell.
that quickly as you're talking about. I don't know.
The quickest.
Friendly Guardian is active.
Are we talking about genotype or phenotype? So genotype is your genetic makeup. Phenotype is your physical characteristics. The quickest one that we have found in a complicated life form, meaning not single cell, eukaryotic or prokaryotic, or deuterostomes and fungi,
10 left.
if you're doing the mycology, that's a whole different thing, is 10 years. There's a lizard that has reshaped its jaws and digestive system and claws to be adapted to eating fruit from bugs, all within
Only
10 years
10
on a
years?
Mediterranean island. That's phenomenally quick.
That's
yeah,
very
that's insane.
That
Is
is
that the same
that is
generation?
fucking insane. No, they breed like something like 10 times a year. Almost
Oh,
every
Oh,
month.
okay.
then I can see that. Then that's taking your
Yeah.
100 generations and is like putting it on speed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That makes sense. So to your point, I think it's a good point that it's not necessarily a fixed amount of time. It's however many
No.
generations you can get within that amount of time.
Because here's the
But-
thing, yeah.
but for
Sorry, I have to
humans-
finish this point for my OCD.
Sure.
You and it's a thing a lot of people mix. We are not the X-Men. We will not gain powers. We are stuck with our genetics as they are. It's the next generation that's the one evolving, and then they're stuck, and they push the next generation, and that's what's going to be the evolution. We don't evolve once we're set.
Well, yeah, because you're stuck. It's almost like having, I don't know. You only have so many Skittles in your pocket. It's not like magically over time you can get more Skittles in your pocket.
Exactly. Well, and gene therapy is trying to change that, but good luck.
Yeah, I wonder
Yeah.
what's all going to be happening from that.
Sorry, Phil. I had to say that. You go ahead. I know I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. Sorry I interrupted you. I think people would still look more or less like people on Mars given 1,000 years. I think it would take 100,000 years for them to evolve to be something totally different. And totally different in my mind would be not even bipedal, like 3
Third
to
eye,
4
worm
times
people.
bigger. Yeah, different numbers of limbs or appendages. Like that would take a long time. And I
Start
think that's when you
worshipping
get into
technology.
aliens.
Here's
Something like that.
the thing too.
Check
What's
your
called the
weapons,
wild
check your
type is
gear.
the
We're home
normal,
for
and you have your variants and aberrants.
Uh-huh.
But it's like so random. Even after 100,000 years, they could be exactly the same. Because
Right.
these mutations happen at random.
And
And most-
so here's a question. Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Because you seem to be pretty knowledgeable about like how evolution and natural selection work. Assuming that the society on Mars doesn't have natural selection anymore, if you have these mutations that would make them look like aliens, do you think that would become the commonplace? That more people would reproduce with that person?
All stations, green light.
If more people want to reproduce, well, see, the more people that want to, the more gene flow there is, the less variation. The more it gets distributed, the percentage-wise, it goes down.
But do you get, I guess my question at the core is, do you get big differentiation in a species without natural selection?
Yes, because evolution never stops.
At a
Natural selection just
level,
goes, hey, sorry, you had bad luck. But, like the whole pepper moth thing.
What's that?
Pepper what now?
So pepper moth, they are moths in England. They are white and black and spotted in between.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is England has a lot of birch trees which are white with little flakes of black. So that's why they call them pepper. It looks like somebody threw pepper on them.
Oh, okay.
So they have their genetic variation, and it never really goes away. Those genes stay within the population. That some would be really dark and some would be very light. Well, it turns out the very light ones wouldn't get eaten by birds. Just the dark ones, which was why there was always more light-colored moths.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened is the Industrial Revolution. All the soot came out and all the trees turned black from the soot.
Hurry up.
All the white ones got eaten by the birds because the trees were all covered in black. You could see them, and all the black ones were left alone. Now the black ones became more popular, but it never got rid of both of those. It always stayed. There was always percentages of the population that go back and forth. That's what natural selection is.
Right.
The evolution is how much they go one way or the other. It's just that gene exchange between them. If they go, well, not really, because they would go random, kind of like the Labrador. The Labradors have puppies. Some are brown, some are yellow, some are black. Kind of like that.
Yeah. I think it depends on two things, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think it depends on the opportunity and the time scale for like people to look like different aliens, because the opportunity would be like they need to respond to some stimulus. Like, let's say it's advantageous for people to have green skin for whatever reason on Mars.
Blocks the radiation from that planet somehow.
Yeah, that's a good example. Then the majority of generations would evolve to have green skin, most likely. But you're
Because they would
taking
have an
out-
easier time. Yeah.
Exactly. But the challenge, though, like barring that, the challenge with people evolving to look like aliens is you don't have natural selection anymore. So it would have to be universally advantageous.
So to get rid of natural selection, it says natural selection, there's so many little things that natural selection can do. Natural selection can be very forceful and wipe things out, or it can be very minor that just makes it easier for something to reproduce.
I think it would be stuff like this. I think people, and there are scientists that are smarter than me that have studied this, but they're like, if there's less gravity on Mars, people would be taller, their spines would be less compressed over generations. Martians would be like 7 feet tall if humans go to Mars over like 5 generations. I think that would happen, but I don't think they'd be green and have like 4 arms. I don't know, unless there's some
4 arms would be a really hard one.
Right.
Green skin's more feasible because people already have blue skin and different melanin and different mutation, like the whole blue skin people.
Right.
Because the issue with something called oleologs, you would need a duplication error in your genetics to form another set of arms.
Oh, okay.
So that is possible, but it's extremely. Oh man, it would be.
It's not very advantageous.
No, because
right.
the whole thing too is you have genetic checkers, and if they see something's wrong, they X-nay it. Ooh, that's a duplication. Get rid of this whole thing. Start over from fresh.
I see.
So it would have to go through like cancer. Cancer isn't 1 mutation. It's at the minimum, I think, 46 mutations.
Oh, okay.
Something that could fly under the radar. It's not just 1 mutate. Like you need that duplication. It would have to not impact anything else, and somehow be not detrimental. Even if it was detrimental, just you would still have to be able to survive. Like it couldn't like compress your lungs or something. It could fuck up something else, stretch it out too far, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So big evolutions like that are so hard to come by. That's why they take so long. Small evolution, just allele exchange, just a genetic component. Blonde hair that popped up. The Yamana people, almost none of them had blonde hair. It was like they're all brown hair from all the graves and everything, but they all carried the traits for blonde hair. And so when they settled into isolated areas, aka Scandinavia, Germany, where they formed small tribes and stuff like that, that recessive allele took off and became more prevalent.
Well, that's like the blue eye thing. That was like kind of like a recent thing, right? Like
10,000 years ago. So was blonde hair.
Really, blonde hair was a recent thing too.
Blonde hair hasn't been around for a long time.
I knew blue eyes wasn't around for a long time.
Well, everybody has blue eyes.
Well, I meant
It's
like
just
when it stays blue.
Oh, it just means that your body is lacking a protein that produces that brown pigment. That's all blue eyes are. Because what falls under blue is gray, blue, green. Those are all considered blue eyes. Because brown eyes are just a pigment, a protein that grows over your eyes, so it absorbs more sun.
Oh, it makes it easier for you to see during the sunlight.
In the plains and deserts and sunny areas, and where blue eyes are advantageous is they let more light in. So when you look at Europe, where it's overcast 90% of the time, and they have these big massive forests and mountains that are dark, you can use all the light you can get.
Isn't that interesting though, that like I'm sure time scale has something to do with this, but it's interesting to me that like today's people, Homo sapiens, they don't look that different from each other. But like look at Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, to your point, they look very different. So I think when I wonder if that's because natural selection is less important these days, you see less of a difference. Maybe that's part of it.
Well, natural selection is still important.
But it doesn't really happen though. It hasn't really happened for the last 500 years, I would say.
Natural selection is like, if you're born with spina bifida, you should have no problem passing that gene down because there's no natural selective pressures. But spina bifida kind of makes it hard to get up and find a mate, doesn't it? That's a natural.
Still, I don't know.
Natural selection, you can overpower natural selection and push through it. Natural selection is just a pressure that selects whichever one has an easier time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good thing we're minimizing natural selection these days, but I think I think when you have that, the whole concept of evolution kind of slows down. It goes down a notch, I think, a little bit.
Well, I think I kind of going back to the whole genetic thing. I think kind of like showing like not evolution necessarily, but like selective breeding and stuff like that, where you look at dogs and how you can have these, or even pigeons. Like, I've seen some pretty crazy looking pigeons that look not even like a pigeon. And it's because they just keep breeding these pigeons and they just keep selecting the ones that look weirder and weirder. And then it's like, then you have like this crazy looking animal.
That's all dog breeds are, is they found a trait and they just kept breeding it. So if you just have a trait and you keep breeding it, it spreads within the gene pool and it becomes prevalent.
Well, that was like there's this one cool Russian experiment. This guy was wanting to prove that, you know, like the whole wolf thing. And so he had foxes, and what he did was he would grab the foxes, and the ones that were more open to hanging out with humans, he would let them breed. But the ones that were not as cool about hanging out with humans, he wouldn't let them breed. And I think after like 3 generations, each subsequent one was a little bit more open to being pet or being around a person. Like domestication.
And you know what's crazy too about that? Is that the foxes, they're in the same genus as dogs, right? Canines?
Yeah.
Is they all started developing the same traits that dog breeds have. Curled tails, down pointed ears, more spots, bigger curlier hair.
Interesting.
They started adapting to try to look cuter. They started looking cuter because part of it is getting attention from a human.
So then that makes me think, like, so how much of it? Because this is like fast. Because it's like one thing, like when you look at animal, like, so that makes you wonder, like, how much of it is like an environmental type thing, like where
a lot of it.
Well, because that's why. Because I mean, how often are you hearing about people raising foxes as pets? So it's like, it's kind of a weird.
By the way, are terrible pets. Never buy a pet fox.
I would never do it. No.
They can't control their urine. They piss everywhere.
I might want to pet.
Nobody talks about that.
I want to pet like possum or a turkey, but no, never a fox.
Possums are actually pretty clean, and turkeys are mean.
Well, yes, it's got to imprint on you. That's the problem. If it doesn't imprint on you, then yeah, you're not gonna have a fun time with that animal. But so then I'm wondering, like, how much of it is like environmental. So like
environmental genetics or just environmental pressures, because there's also environmental genetics.
Well, the reason why I say it like that, because I'm thinking about how a gecko or some of those animals will like blend into their environment. It's just almost like almost as if, like, you know, someone came in and said, hey, you know, you like hanging out on this tree? Well, it'd be really cool if you started looking like that tree. And it's just like, how does that even come about? Like, that's
because they got eaten less often by birds, natural.
Exactly.
True. It's just that's just kind of wild to me. Just how
evolution is just finding your niche. You just find a niche and go with it. Like there's some crazy ones. Malaria. You're aware of sickle cell anemia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually an evolutionary trait that's saved a lot of people's lives.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah.
I didn't know that.
It makes you what?
Oh, it saved a lot of people's life.
Oh, because it fights malaria more.
Well, the malaria parasite can't hold on to sickle cells. So those with sickle cell in them, it makes it a lot harder for malaria. They can't take off.
Interesting.
Those without it become infected, and those with all sickle cells, well, you're not really going to live long, so they kind of get screwed. But those with the both, that mix, that sickle cell anemia, where they get both, areas where the mosquitoes carry malaria, they kind of have like a natural immunity.
Well, yeah, because then it's like, even though, well, because then like you're in that region where there's more malaria, so then your body adapted to make it harder for the malaria to stick. So then I don't know, that stuff just is so fascinating. It's like I said, another thing where it's just, I don't know. Or
the Europeans. The Europeans are immune to AIDS.
What?
About, what is it, 9% of Europeans are immune to AIDS. Because of the bubonic plague.
Right there, Malcolm.
Is the bubonic plague caused the sickness, and that sickness caused the mutation. So if they survived the bubonic plague, they got this mutation. This mutation was a protein on their leukocytes, their white blood cells. Now, when AIDS the HIV virus, HIV/AIDS virus comes into them, they look for that protein to latch on and infect. Because they don't have that protein, the virus can't take off in their body.
Did not know these things.
And I didn't know that there was people that were immune
Gas
to
is
it.
inbound.
About 9% of Europeans. So 1 out of 10 Europeans is immune.
Oh shoot!
Less than 10
That's
were
insane. So 1 in
That was
1 in 10.
Valiant effort.
They used their plasma when they were trying to do AIDS research. That's how they found it.
I never heard of this before.
A lot of medical discoveries are actually accidental or scientific discoveries. It's a good thing.
Paradigms force people to not be productive in science. And the worst part about science is you have to accept that paradigm to gain credibility in science.
Yeah,
Kinda
the whole
like-
premise of science, really, people lose sight of sometimes. It's like you need to investigate it until you decide it's garbage or valid. You don't know until you investigate it, you know?
Until there's
Which is
nothing
crazy
more you can
because
gain from
all
it.
science is a method, and science says question everything.
Yeah.
Question it until you can't prove it wrong, and that's what we'll go with. That's all science is.
And that's why we need more people studying aliens. So I'm going to close on that note, personally.